and welcome back to another episode here on the podcast. It is December. Can you even believe it? 2025 is knocking on the door.
Whoa, so true. Cannot believe it. It is passing by so fast.
So one thing that I'm passionate about here at How to Survive Healthcare is making sure we finish the year up strong. Now, many of us, particularly here in America, have a spirit of overindulgence, shall we say, around the holidays. So today I wanted to talk about why perhaps that is not maybe the way we should be celebrating the holidays. Of course, followed by some action items of how can we balance celebration without totally trashing our health goals, because gotta have some fun. So that's our hot topic today. And I just want to say before we dive in too far, I get it. It is hard. Your girl makes some real good cookies, especially my peanut butter
She
cookies.
does.
Yeah, you got them last year for Christmas.
True
That actually tends to
story.
be what I do for Christmas for my close friends and family is I give things that cannot be bought in a store. But I know how hard it is to just eat one, two, and not a half a dozen, the whole dozen. It has happened before, but I am vowing not to derail my health plans this year, especially since I am still recovering through my postpartum journey, getting back to my pre pregnancy body. I've been feeling stronger and lighter and better. And those are things that I want you to feel too. So, those are some of the bigger reasons. Like, we think about weight and like, to weigh less for most people is a desired goal, and that's nice, but it's really more so about how you feel when you're not in this place of overindulgence. So just want to put a little more emphasis on that before we dive in, to say the goals aren't just about the numbers on the scale. So, Nicole, have you dealt with
Yeah.
this holiday free-for-all mindset before?
Like every year for the last 50
Right.
years. I don't know, maybe a little bit. Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
recognize this holiday free for all, and I love that we're talking about this, Kate. Is that this year specifically, I personally have been having my own health challenges with type 2 diabetes. And this is also an area where I am committed, like not to fall into this mindset of, oh, just everything goes, right? It doesn't matter. It's the holidays. Everything's okay. Because while that is true, my body really knows that it's not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't
Right.
afford to, to have that kind of blood sugar content and my A1C go up as a result of, I've worked really hard this year. Let's just put it that way. I've worked really
Yeah,
hard
you
this
have.
year, you know, right? And so this last 4 to 6 weeks of the year, 4 weeks of the year, I am not about to like blow it all up. And so I think it's really important that, um, you know, it's really common, right? In our society, we do this whole thing of like instant gratification. And
Oh,
it's going to
yeah.
be really important to understand for me and for lots of us. I it's about the long haul. This is the marathon that we're running, right? My body is here for the duration of my life. And so it's not just this holiday season, but sure, it's easy to fall into, oh, just have at it and whatever. But I too am committed to not doing that this year and being more aware of the long term effects of my choices each day, which, like I said, I've worked really hard. So if you too have worked really hard through the
Yeah.
year, don't blow it now, right?
And on the other side of that, if you maybe don't self identify as the person who has worked really hard on your health this year, well, you know the phrase, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So just because maybe perhaps you haven't been taking the best care of yourself, of your body this year, don't use that as an excuse to add on the problems and make it worse. So Nicole, since you've chosen to share it, I want to piggyback off of what you were saying with how you've been struggling, or struggling is not really the word, you've been crushing it with the getting the pre-diabetes under control. But Nicole, 1 in 3 Americans either has type 2 diabetes or is in that pre-diabetic range. That's a significant
That's a
statistic.
lot.
And that does go, that's a lot of people. I mean, one in 3, like it's a lot of people. And we know that type 2 diabetes, while there is a genetic component, it is mostly influenced by lifestyle choices, diet, exercise, substances. And to couple that with the fact that 74% of Americans are in this category of overweight or obese. And again, it's not to focus on the pounds on the scale, but we know the data is very clear that the more excess weight we carry, the more at risk we are for a litany of diseases, diabetes being one of them, but also high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And I want to be very clear, this is not an episode about fat shaming. But the fact of the matter is that it's not serving you to have this excess weight. And the statistics show us that the average American gains 1 to 2 pounds through the holiday season, which doesn't sound like much. And I mean, truly, 1 or 2 pounds, it's not a lot. But the average American also doesn't lose that weight, and it tends to just accumulate over the years. And that's where it's so sneaky, because it's a small enough amount that like you almost don't notice it, and you can kind of just like, oh, it's only a pound or two and scoot it by. But it's the fact that it stays, and then we just keep doing it again, and then God forbid you have some other reason why you gain weight too. So with that being said, with it just being a pound or two, it also doesn't take a significant amount of mental effort and workaround to avoid that weight gain. So that's really the focus here. Is it doesn't have to be hard. We're gonna share some tips for you, but I just would encourage you to kind of challenge that all or nothing mindset. And this applies not to just to food, but the other substance we see this around the holidays is alcohol.
Right. This is again, it's that whole idea of, oh, it's the holidays, it's a free for all we can do, right? Like it's fun and all of the things. And at the same time, there are long-term effects and consequences to this. Things like, the statistics around increased emergency room visits as related to alcohol accidents, and like I wish I could remember the number, but anyway, we see this typically in healthcare, right? We see our visits in the ER through the holidays related to alcohol definitely goes up, right? We know that there's an increase in fatal accidents on the highway as a result of alcohol during the holidays. We do have that statistic, and it's 40% increase in fatal accidents, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. No, it's a lot, right? And so this is something that, in passing, seems like it's not a big deal. And then when we sit down and really have these conversations around it, there are big implications to consuming more alcohol without awareness during the holidays. And I think that's what this episode is about, right? Is just being aware and making these small changes to ensure that we're safer for longer. So obviously drinking responsibly and making sure that, others around you are being responsible in those social gatherings. Care about the people around you, which this is what the holiday is about. We'll talk more about that later, but
just being
exactly
aware. Yeah. The holidays the holiday season is about being around those you love and, spending time together. And yes, enjoying ourselves. We're not here to be party poopers.
Right.
I want you
Tell
to enjoy
Kayla and I,
yourself.
you know, that we're not party poopers.
Woo, woo. However, if we come to the holiday season with this free for all mindset and perhaps maybe not as much intention around our consumption as we could have, we are setting ourselves up to make to steer away from our pro health choices, which ultimately, the more poor choices we put on our body, the less time that our body is going to last for us. And this is the only one that we got. So if you want to enjoy more holidays, then we need to put more intention around the ones that are right in front of us. And then, especially with that 40% increase in fatal car accidents, guys, that's not celebrating the holidays. So I want to move into, I've got my 5 hot tips to share for how we can enjoy the holidays, but without pushing into the area of overindulgence. So my first one is the 80-20 principle. This is one of my favorites. You can apply it to so many things. But the idea is that you want to stick to your healthy eating habits about 80% of the time and reserve 20% of the time for that indulgence. So this doesn't mean 80% of the hours in the day you eat carrots and then the other 20% of the time you're stuffing your face with cupcakes. Let's be honest, I just want to be real clear. It cracks me up whenever people say that they're cheating on their diet, because I'm like, who are you fooling? Like, your body knows. It's got the receipts.
Right.
So use the 80-20 principle,
Right.
with some critical thinking there, because you can't fool your body. Whatever you put in, there's nothing you can undo the effects of what you've put in. So that's my first one. And you can apply it to a little bit with alcohol as well. Like 80% of the time that you're there, have your water or your seltzer, and maybe stick with the 20% of the drinks being alcohol. Or if you want to spread that out, I don't know, but you get the concept. Yeah.
Right. Kayla, I love that 80-20. In fact, I think that's going to be my big takeaway from today's conversation, because I was standing here thinking about how I have adjusted things in my life around this prediabetes and watching, my sugar levels and watching what happens. And I also find myself, right? Like, there are days where I'm like, okay, I want to have something out of the ordinary, and maybe it's not healthy, and maybe it's going to be, have a bad sugar spike, but I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to get right back in. So I love that 80-20 principle. I also love the idea, I've learned this as well. So some of us, my son and myself, have been made fun of many, many times at the dinner table. We are generally the last to finish our meal. And so it kind of comes into this second tip on how to moderate things. Eat mindfully and savor every bite. Basically,
Yes.
like, slow down, right? Make sure I enjoy food, and it's really nice when I'm able to enjoy all of the flavors and the textures, and, actually enjoy every bite that I'm actually putting into my mouth. And when we do this, this is really interesting. I didn't know this until recently, but when we do this, it actually sends message to our brain, and we actually recognize when we're full earlier in the process.
Mm-hmm.
If we're eating too fast, and help me if I'm wrong, but if we're eating too fast, then we will continue consuming beyond where we're satiated. Like, when we're full,
Mm-hmm.
we just don't recognize it because we're moving too quickly in the process.
Yeah, no, you're
So,
absolutely right. And if I remember correctly, I think the science is that it takes about 20 minutes for your brain to send the signal. I mean, for your stomach to send the signal to your brain that it's full.
mm,
So you really, and this is not specifically a holiday tip, but you're right, Nicole. You really should be eating you should not continue eating until you feel full, because you've actually you're
mhm,
past the point at that point, and
right.
you're gonna
You're
you're
beyond
gonna
full.
need those
Yes.
stretchy pants.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that has been, like I said, if every meal, we kind of use that, but specifically, I love it when we talk about the holidays, right? Because so many times we're in these big gatherings and we want to visit and we want to do things. And so we kind of rush through the meal. And,
Yeah.
so if you can slow it down a little bit, maybe do more grazing versus, gobbling, right? Anyway,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
truly, I
yeah,
mean, you'll get more enjoyment out of the same amount of calories, when you're taking your time and really being intentional and tasting and feeling the textures and whatnot. Yeah, no, you're right.
I love it.
So my
Yeah.
next tip number 3 is filling up on protein and vegetables. So this relates back to the idea, like, we want to enjoy the holidays. We're certainly not advocating for anybody to feel deprived, and that's really the balance we're trying to hit here, is to feel like you're fully enjoying without going over the line. So when
Right.
you load up your plate with vegetables and protein, number one, it's going to help you stay within the guidelines of that 80%, 80-20 rule. But also, it's giving your body everything you need and not leaving as much room for the junk, essentially, the junk food.
Right.
Um, and when you pair protein with vegetables that have a lot of fiber and stuff, you feel fuller longer too. So you can
Mhm.
have we'll say turkey, turkey, ham, chicken,
Right.
whatever it is, with the green beans and maybe some mashed potatoes. I mean, they're not terrible depending on, well, I guess if Paula Deen made them, that's a lot of butter, but you get the
Maybe,
idea.
maybe, but
Fill up on that stuff, and it's
right,
you're gonna enjoy it. Let's be honest, and
right.
and then you have a couple cookies afterwards. But you mentioned earlier that blood sugar spike when you fill up with food with protein and complex carbs and whatnot prior to having those desserts.
Yes.
Not only are you eating less desserts, but you're not going to have that blood sugar spike and then crash. And yes, non-diabetics, this
Mm,
happens to you too. This is not something
yeah,
that's specific to diabetics. This is how the human body works.
right.
So
Yeah. Which I wish I had known before. I mean, I really do. I wish I had understood how all of that worked because it does make a huge difference. I find myself when I think about because my journey with this actually started in 2023 during the holiday season. So it was really
oh,
interesting that, so before we went to my niece and nephew's home for our big holiday meal, I actually ate a really good breakfast with eggs and bacon, and high protein, some great Greek yogurt. And the whole principle behind that, Kayla, was exactly what you're talking about. Let me get some good protein in here so that when I get there, I'm not feeling famished or like, and it helped, and it really did help moderate. In fact, yes, it did. It worked very well. So,
yeah, and actually, Nicole, to that note, that segues into my fourth tip, which is don't arrive hungry. What you're describing, going to a holiday party, is not an unusual experience. And I know how many times I'm like, oh, we're going to have a big meal. Like, I'm not going to eat, or I'm just going to have this little thing for breakfast. And then you get there. And first of all, the meal is never ready when they say it's going to be. So then what are you doing? You're just like grazing on like the
waiting.
fudge that's out and the cookies and the rolls
Yeah.
and then you're eating out of hunger. You're not enjoying it as much as you would
Yeah.
be, and you're probably
Right.
not eating the things you had intended to. So don't arrive hungry. Obviously, save some room for the special food. But I also, especially now that I am a mom of small children, I've always got snacks in my bag. So like protein bars and stuff. Because again, you never know when people don't cook turkeys on the regular. Okay. They don't know when it's going to be done.
Right. That's right. Right. Give the cook grace. That's right. I love it. So I think the only thing left that we haven't talked about, we talked about a little bit earlier, but it really is just about watching your alcohol intake and being careful with your drinks during these activities. Is that the fifth tip? I think I was trying to
It
count, but I'm a
is.
little bit
Yeah.
off. Okay. All right. So yeah. So just make sure that we're supporting ourselves, making sure that we're watching that, keep it in check. Alternate drinks, that's a great idea. Like do a water and then an alcoholic drink and then a seltzer and another water, and just kind of pull it out, spread it over time so that the impact of the alcohol intake is lessened on the body. This supports not only our health goals, but it also helps us reduce those potential risks that we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
accidents, all of those things as well. Impaired
And on
judgment.
that note, yeah, and on that note, I just also want to add in that if you are planning to drink, whenever you're planning to drink alcohol, you should always have a plan that for every one drink, you're also having a minimum 8 to 12 ounces of water. Alcohol is very dehydrating to the body, and that's a bulk of what causes kind of hangover symptoms. So if you are planning to drink, that will help to curb or maybe somewhat mitigate some of the less desired effects of alcohol. On that note, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that perhaps we should question why we are consuming alcohol. It is literally a poison. It's like chemically one step away from gasoline, which makes sense if you think about the smell.
Right.
And it is known to cause a whole host of things, especially like cancers and whatnot. I didn't know that until I was doing a podcast on breast cancer that it's a huge risk factor for that. So we live in a very, we live in a very booze soaked society. But again, just because it's commonplace and it's everywhere doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best thing for us. So I just leave you with that to ponder and question.
Interesting. Well, Kayla, I think that's a good time for us to kind of pull things together and really remind folks like the true spirit of the holidays, right? This is a time of year when we get to, and I say get to because most of us don't have the time to spend with family and friends and important loved ones through the year as much as we'd like. So if we take this opportunity to really focus on the connections and the love and the relationships and the family rather than the month-long indulgence in food and drink and parties, I think that really fills our souls so much more than the food and beverages that we try to fill ourselves with. Maybe creating memories that don't center around overindulgence, right? It's like this paradigm shift, right? To kind of shift things away from an attitude of overindulgence and free for all willy-nilly into, hey, what are we doing that's going to create lasting memories together so that, we have those going for. Such a special time of year. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were saying earlier, again, the purpose of the holidays is to enjoy spending time with our family and our loved ones. And we want to make sure that we're making choices that align with that and can keep us here in top functioning condition for many more holidays to come. So we leave you with that this week. If this is something you struggle with and you're looking for a little bit more individualized support in these areas, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to jump on a call with you and put some specific strategy for you around that. It's how to, the number 2, sh.com, and you can find us there. We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.